Everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to Carmichael Lynch's Black History Month program, where we celebrate and acknowledge the strong contributions made by Blacks in America. We celebrate the history and the opportunity that we have to continue our charge to do more and do better through our network of employees, our clients, our freelancers, all of who are an integral part of our Carmichael Lynch community. Today, we have the honor, the true honor, to welcome one of your nation's most esteemed authors, human and civil rights activist, Kevin Powell. This conversation will be moderated by our Director and Head of Multicultural Strategy and Inclusion, Carol Fraser Haynesworth. We hope you enjoy the program and make sure to ask questions at the end of the program. Welcome again, and let's celebrate Black History Month every day in the workplace and in our work. And with that, I'll hand it over to Carol to introduce Kevin and to get us started. Carol.
Thank you so much, Marcus, for your kind introduction. And also, I must acknowledge the leadership that you share with us here, which is one that is transparent and one that invites us to have this type of conversations and allows us to continue to invest in these communities and these causes. So I wanted to thank you for that. Because Black History Month means nothing without action, and you provide the platform so that we can be actionable against this work. I also want to take this opportunity to welcome our clients, our employees, and Kevin. Our clients, we want to thank you because of your partnership. This work that we do is holistic, is one where we hope that we not only advance the work, but that we also advance in the workplace, right? So that we can continue to advance representation and continue to make sure that the voices are not silenced, but that they are uplifted by the work that we do with your partnership. Also, our employees, for your activism throughout, whether it's the ERGs or whether every piece of work and message that you create, every campaign, where you ensure that we are in there being representative of the different voices also. So that is how we celebrate Black History Month. And today we have a very special guest who has been leading this work for decades, really, who has been managing the conversation, whether it's via his prolific books that he has written that have really documented the lived experience of Black America for decades. He is a human and civil rights activist. One of the things that I admire about him is that he truly is a person that when he is needed, he is there, he is present. He has never left the space or the hand of those that are willing to make a difference, not only in the community, but in this world. And like in that manner, he is here present with us, even though he has had a very busy day. For example, today he was sharing with us as he's traveling. He has had several speaking engagements, but he is present. And that is one of those things that I admire about you, Kevin, that you have never been discouraged. You have never stepped down. In fact, you are one of those individuals that has always stepped up. And you have used every platform that you use, every talent, every skill to advance this conversation in America and in the world. So we are honored to have you today, and we are grateful for all the work that you have done to lead this work. So thank you. And I think there's a saying I always say that when I see individuals that have carried the torch in this way, well done, Kevin. We appreciate you. And with that, I would like to take a quick minute to tell you a little bit more about Kevin before you give some opening remarks. Kevin Powell is one of the most celebrated political, cultural, literary, and hip hop voices in America. The Jersey City product of a single mother, absent father, horrific poverty, and violence, he was able to study at Rutgers University in his home state of New Jersey due to the Educational Opportunity Fund, a program created during the Civil Rights Movement to benefit poor youth. Says Kevin, just to be able to get to college, to be exposed to a new world, a new way, changed my life forever. And I am forever grateful for the chance. Kevin has gone on to be a poet and journalist and the author of 15 books, including Grocery Shopping with My Mother, his new poetry collection, and his critically acclaimed autobiography, The Education of Kevin Powell, A Boy's Journey into Manhood, which is being adapted for the screen. One of his upcoming books will be a biography of Tupac Shakur, who Kevin interviewed several times while a senior writer for Quincy Jones' Vibe magazine. Indeed, he has penned articles, essays, and blogs for a wide range of newspapers, magazines, and major websites, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, The Nation, NPR, ESPN, Essence, Ebony, Rolling Stone, Esquire, Huffington Post, The Guardian, The Baffler, The Progressive Complex, and British GQ. As a civil and human rights activist, Kevin will launch a new American organization in 2023, yet to be named, focused on a voter education and voter empowerment and bringing people together, in which we will showcase a website full of blogs from contributors of diverse backgrounds. Kevin's activism also includes an annual clothing drive for homeless youth in New York City, a leadership role in the movement to redefine manhood away from sexism and violence, a deep responsibility to mentorship, and development of people of every age as agents for change, and a commitment to democracy, justice, diversity, inclusion, and equality for the American people, be it education, Me Too immigrant rights, gun violence prevention, marriage equality, economic opportunity, healthcare access, or an end to racial profiling. To further demonstrate that commitment to a life of service, Kevin ran for Congress in his adopted hometown of New York City in 2008 and 2010. He has lectured and worked and traveled in all 50 American states and 5 of the world's 7 continents. He is directing, writing, and producing his first documentary film called When We Free the World, about healthy manhood versus toxic manhood, about fathers and sons. And Kevin is the playwright of an upcoming stage play based around his most recent poetry collection about what it is to be a man. Kevin is a proud and longtime resident of Brooklyn, New York. And with that, welcome the Honorable Kevin Powell.
Oh my gosh, I'm humbled. I'm actually exhausted hearing my own bio. Thank you. I'm deeply honored. I'm so glad to be back with you all, Carmichael Lynch and your family, extended family of folks. I see Subaru of America. I want to thank you, Carol and Marcus, and the entire CL team for having me. Just thank you. I'm really. It's been a great day. This is actually my 3rd of 4 conversations like this that I'll have today. I'm in a hotel room in Toledo, Ohio, but I'm invigorated by just seeing all of you all on the screen. It's beautiful. And I was asking in the chat, please, if I could see you all, it'd be great. And I also would love to hear the questions and comments in the chat, if that's all right. And can I just say, right from the start, Carol, and I know we got to get into this, I love everybody. I love all people, no matter what their identities are. I take that very seriously. And I really take this work seriously of trying to figure out ways that we can heal and bring people together, even as we have difficult and uncomfortable at times conversations. I believe this should be a safe space, a non-judgmental space, but let's really talk openly and honestly, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And one of the things that I wanted to share about Kevin's books, just so that you see how impactful he has been in so many lives, including my own. When I never thought I would meet Kevin. I mentioned to him that maybe it was like in 2000 when I was working at CNN, we were doing a book club similar to the one we're doing right here at Carmichael Lynch. And it was about who's going to carry the weight. Remind me, I don't want to say it wrong. Is that the correct name of your book?
Who's going to take the weight?
Who's going to take?
Yeah,
who's going to take the weight? And that book absolutely changed my life. And I'll speak briefly on that. And I've shared transparently, right? When people think of us as a people, there's a monolithic view of what is the Black experience, right? And me being born in Honduras, the experience of mine was completely different than a lot of my peers. And truly, there is a difference that we've talked about before, Kevin, about how essentially Black people of different countries or different socioeconomic statuses have almost a slightly different view, right? But what that book did is that book taught me that it was actually a shared experience, that the thought that there was a different experience was all a myth, right? And it allowed me to lean in intentionally and to understand that even though I was a Black woman from Honduras, highly educated, that there was no difference between me and any other Black woman, regardless of that background. And that really was inspirational and an integral part of my own advocacy. And I think that just in the same way that you touch my journey, you touch the journeys of so many people, that have decided to go ahead and also carry the weight as you invited us to do so many years ago.
Wow.
So I want to thank you for that personally. And I know that many people share this sentiment of how they have been inspired by your work. So thank you so much. And one of the questions that I have for you is that we're all here celebrating Black History Month, and you have celebrated many and you have inspired many. So I wanted to know, what does Black History Month mean to you today, based on your experience?
Wow, it's a great question. Let me say this first, because I don't want to even assume that everyone knows where Black History Month came from. There was a gentleman named Carter G. Woodson who did not get his high school diploma, a Black man, until he was in his 20s. And he often just studied by kerosene lamp, but he was determined to get his education. And then he went on to become an incredible scholar who had a PhD. He wrote many scholarly articles and books. His most famous book was called The Miseducation of the Negro. And many of us know that a singer, one of our greatest singers ever, Lauryn Hill, did an album that got 8 Grammy Awards in the late 1990s called The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. That title came directly from Carter G. Woodson's reference. And Carter G. Woodson created Negro History Week first, originally in February, not because it was the shortest month, but because 2 people that were very, very important to Black people at that time were born in February. One was Frederick Douglass, who was born into slavery, literally taught himself how to read and write while he was a slave. He would actually pay young white boys, young white counterparts to teach him how to read. And he eventually escaped from slavery, and as we know, became this incredible abolitionist freedom fighter, and was actually the most photographed American in the country during the 1800s. The other person born into slavery, who was born in February, was Abraham Lincoln, who we know was the president of the United States during the Civil War and signed the historic Emancipation Proclamation. And he meant a lot to a lot of Black folks, and that's why Carter G. Woodson picked those 2 folks in that week. It eventually became known as Black History Month because of the evolution of the terminology to describe Black people in this country. And it also expanded to a month because of things like the Civil Rights Movement. And in 1976, it became Black History Month. So I didn't know any of that growing up. And so Black History Month is important to me because, in spite of coming from a poor background, as you described, my mother has a grade school education. My grandmother, her mother could not read or write. I don't take for granted that I'm a first-generation college student, and I was able to go to college because of programs that were created for poor kids during the Civil Rights Movement. But I didn't know any of it because it wasn't taught to me. Just like we're about to celebrate Women's History Month in the next week or so, starting March 1st, next Tuesday, I didn't learn anything about the contributions of women and girls of any race, any identity, either. And so any of these celebrations, Black History Month, Women's History Month, Pride, any acknowledgement of the disabled community, Jewish folks, Italian folks, the Latinx community, Asian folks, Indigenous folks, they are important because they help to make visible those who have been rendered invisible. That's why they're important. How do I go to school 12 years, 13 years, K through 12, be a student and not learn anything about Black history? Is reduced to about a couple of pages, if it was even a couple of pages. Women's history is the same way. I learned about Betsy Ross holding a flag. I learned about Rosa Parks not giving up her seat. She was used for Black History Month and Women's History Month. I heard vaguely about Helen Keller, vaguely about some other women, and that was it. And so when we think about things as like racism and sexism, racial profiling or rape culture, we need to understand that those things are directly tied to people's incredible ignorance about people who are different than them. So that's why Black history matters to me. It's not just February, it's 365 days for me every single day of the year. And it's not, and I also understand that Black history is American history. If you remove Black people, a lot of the things that we consider American food would not be a part of the equation. If you remove Black people, there'd be no jazz, no rock and roll, no blues, no hip hop, no soul music, no disco, any of that. If you remove Black people, there wouldn't be things, inventions like the traffic light, et cetera. And so that's not to be an egomaniac or anything like that. It's just to say, let us acknowledge the contributions of people equally. And that's why it matters to me, because I'm one of those people who grew up profoundly self-hating because of what I was told in terms of stereotypes about Black people, but also profoundly self-hating because I was invisible. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that even in other communities, it could be women, it could be the Jewish community, it could be the LGBTQ plus community, you also see the same kind of self-hatred because of what has been taught, the stereotypes about people, the Latinx community, the Asian community. And so we need to know who we are. We can't talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, any of us. And look at the folks here, I'm sure all these identities here. We need to know who we are. What are we bringing to the conversation? What are we bringing to the table of the human family? So that's why it matters. And it should matter to all of us. It's not just for Black people. Just like Women's History Month is not just for women. I need to know this history. I need to know this history. Who are these amazing women that have existed? Who is Audre Lorde? Who's Nikki Giovanni? Who's Sonia Sanchez? Who was Bell Hooks? Who is V, formerly Evans? Why does the vagina monologues matter? Why does For Color Girls matter? Why do I need to listen to these things? Even if it had made me uncomfortable as a cisgendered, straight male, heterosexual male, I have a responsibility to listen, because in listening and learning, you actually deepen your own humanity by being able to cross cultural boundaries. That's why Black History Month, Women's History Month, all of it should matter to all of us.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And I just wanted to tell you that that is the most intelligent, thorough answer that I've ever heard of the meaning of Black History Month. And I think what I love, one of the things that I love about it is that it's in alignment with our approach here at Carmichael Lynch, that we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion not being a sentiment, but a process. And it's a process of learning, of openness, of flexibility, and until we don't go through that process in the way that you just described it, then this work is actually going nowhere, right? Yeah. Because it takes it's a holistic approach where intention meets education, right? And with that, I would like to ask you, this is going to be the hard question. And we went back and forth on whether we should ask it, but I have to ask it because it's the one that we need to hear. Okay. You have been observing this work this whole time. You've seen a lot. You've been exposed to a lot. Has it evolved? Are we in a better place? And if so, how?
Wow. Wow. Let me put it like this. I think that it would be disrespectful to humanity, to people who have sacrificed careers and lives, literally, including Malcolm X, who yesterday we marked the 57th anniversary of his death, to say there's been no change at all. I'm going to say it again. For me personally, I'm the product of a single mother with a grade school education who raised me on welfare and food stamps and government cheese in rat and roach infested tenements. That's where I come from. She comes from a mother who could not read or write, and the same kind of vicious poverty, but it was in a Southern context. My entire family tree is from South Carolina. I'm a Northerner. And so the fact that I can see 14, 15 books attached to my name and see where my mother came from and where my grandmother came from, that's progress. But if we're talking about the entire society, because I can't just think about myself, I never think about myself only, or even first. I can't do that. It feels like for all the progress that we made during the Civil Rights era, the moment that the ink was dry on the Civil Rights Bill in 64, the Voting Rights Act in 65, there's been a concerted effort to turn back the clock. When you hear people say things like, we want to take things back to the way they used to be, we want to make the country great again. That's racist trope that's saying we are not comfortable with the fact that the Civil Rights Movement didn't just benefit Black people, even though Black people were the engineers of the Civil Rights Movement. It benefited Latinx folks, it benefited Asian folks, Indigenous folks, it benefited women, the disabled community, the LGBTQ plus community. Many people who have been marginalized or rendered invisible benefited from the Civil Rights Movement. That's just a fact. It benefited the entire country. But what has happened, and this is not just in the last couple of years, this goes back really to the end of the Civil Rights Movement, it's been this effort to undermine it. And when you think about it, if you just speak about Black Americans for a second, we're talking about Black history, Black folks were only asking for a few basic things. Can we vote? Imagine that. You say that you're a democracy, can we actually have the right to vote without any interference, any hindrance whatsoever? And the second thing was, can I actually exist because of who I am as a Black person, because of my skin color, without threat of being killed while I'm in bed, Breonna Taylor, or being kneed to death, George Floyd? Can I be who I am, a Jewish person, without being killed or the victim of anti-Semitism at a synagogue in Pittsburgh because I'm Jewish? Or if I'm Asian at a spa in Atlanta, Georgia? Or if I'm a Latinx person at a shopping center in Texas? Or if I happen to be a queer person at a club in Orlando, Florida? Do y'all feel where I'm going with this? You know what I mean? Can I not worry about being raped if I'm a woman just because I'm a woman? Can I worry about not getting killed because I happen to be a trans person? You know what I mean? Can I not be hurt or wounded or just rendered useless because I happen to be a disabled person? And so until everyone that I just talked about and more can actually exist as whole human beings, we still have a long way to go to answer your question. You know what I mean? And if I only think about myself, wow, look what I've done, then I'm like this progress. But I don't think in terms of I or me, I think in terms of we. Specifically my Black and brown communities that I come from. I came up with African Americans and West Indians and Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, but also the human race, the human family, the people here, every one of you, whether we realize it or not, we're all family members, y'all. You know what I'm saying? We all belong to the same family. And so, yeah, it doesn't matter to me if it's Black folks getting killed in a church in South Carolina or it's Jewish folks getting killed in a synagogue in Pittsburgh. I'm still going to feel the same level of pain and hurt and frustration. How is it that we can say that we've made all this progress, but people are still being killed and hurt and wounded because of who they are? Until that changes, until that ends, we still have a long way to go. Now, what gives me hope, Carol, and everyone else on this Zoom, is the Me Too movement, is Black Lives Matter in the summer of 2020. When you saw a diverse, multicultural, multi-generational group of people, not just in America, around the world, saying this is unacceptable. But we also need to remember that the civil rights movement actually was 13 years, the heart of it, 1955 to 1968. It can't just be, oh my God, George Floyd just got kneed to death for 9+ minutes and we're upset and we're protesting in the summer of 2020, then it's all over again. What made it possible for someone like me to exist is because of young Black and white folks who are freedom riders, who are doing the sit-ins. When you look at, Cheney, Goodman, Schwerner, a Black person and 2 Jewish people who were killed, they sacrificed their lives in Mississippi around voting rights. That's why I exist, because they sacrificed their lives. That's why we exist, because they literally sacrificed so that we could be here. You know what I mean? When you think about all the women who fought for women to get the right to vote, women have only had the right to vote for a century. You know what I'm saying? And so it says to me, we have work to do. And it's not just, about protesting and marching and all of those things. I'll do that. That's what I'll be doing for the rest of my life personally. But inside of Carmichael Lynch, inside of Subaru, inside of other corporate spaces, college campuses, et cetera, we have to decide, Carol and everyone, do we want to be bridge builders or do we want to be bridge destroyers? Do we want to be interrupters or we just want to be passive bystanders like, well, there's nothing we can do about it? If someone took that attitude a generation ago, I wouldn't exist right now. That's just a fact. You know what I mean? So that's the way, I'm trying not to get emotional about it, but it's like, I don't know about y'all, but I don't know why anyone would be comfortable with racism or sexism or anti-Semitism or Islamophobia or homophobia or transphobia or ableism or classism, any form of hate. Like, why should any of us ever be comfortable with that? Why should anyone be comfortable with women doing the same work as men and getting paid less? Why should he be comfortable with that? You know what I mean? Why should we be comfortable with someone who happens to be disabled being looked at as inferior simply because they're quote unquote disabled? You know what I mean? That's where it's at for me at this stage in my life, Carol. I have endless hope. I can definitely see the progress. Absolutely. We'd be lying. Barack Obama wouldn't exist without the progress. There's many examples of Kamala Harris, et cetera. But it feels like every time we take a step forward, we get knocked back 4 or 5 steps. And that shouldn't be acceptable to us. It should not be acceptable to us. And so I think the question I always ask people, Carol, well, who are you? Who are we? And, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, when most of us will not be here, people are going to look back on this time, this global pandemic. They're going to look back at all this strife and division, all this violence, and they're going to ask, well, what did they do? What did you do? What did you do? What did they do when they were here? What did you do?
Wow, I love that, Kevin, because it takes us to our next question that I wanted to ask you is, what can we do? We are here as an advertising industry, and I always tell people in our network, I say, we actually have a tremendous opportunity that we can't miss, right, with this platform. But you've worked with media pretty closely, and what is it that we can all do, whether you're a client, whether you're working on the advertising agency, how can we partner with you? And then, if you don't mind, individually, because then we still have that personal commitment so that we can properly answer that question and that challenge that you just posed to us right now.
represent the people on the planet, represent the people in the country, make sure they see themselves. Is really simple to me. I didn't see myself growing up, and it's not just me. It's Latinx folks, it's Asian folks, it's indigenous folks. It's folks who identify as women, it's folks who are in the LGBTQ plus community, it's disabled folks. I was just in a conversation the other day with a couple of folks from the Jewish community, and they were talking about Jewish self-hatred, making sure that people understand that everyone is beautiful, everyone's handsome. You know what I mean? The conversation started off about a conversation around Barbara Streisand and how she was told that she was unattractive because of how she looked, because of her nose, quote unquote. Part of the job of media is to show everyone equally, not to make it seem like there's only one standard of beauty. You know what I mean? Who cares what the size of your nose is? Who cares what the texture of your hair is? Who cares about your lips or your hips or whatever your body type is? Everyone's beautiful, everyone's handsome. But if you look at a lot of things that we put out there, we're sending a message that only certain types of people are beautiful or handsome or attractive. The body shaming that we do, all of that kind of stuff. And so, for me as a Black person, I'll put it to you like this. I saw a commercial the other day. It was during the Super Bowl where someone pointed out to me, they showed a white couple, a husband and wife with their kid. And they were, the daughter was in an interracial relationship with a young Black male. But when they showed the Black male's family, it was only his mother, as if Black fathers don't exist. Think about that for a second. Now, I'm definitely an example of someone who did not have a father, but I happen to know that there are many Black fathers out there. And so we don't even realize how we consciously or subconsciously through advertising, through media, perpetuates stereotypes of what these folks are doing, what exists in these communities. Because honestly, part of the problem is that a lot of us are not culturally competent, Carol. We have a responsibility. I realized a long time ago, I need to learn who I am as a Black person, as an African descendant person. I need to learn my history. That's my first priority. But as I started to grow, and as you said, as I started to travel around America to all 50 states and 5 of the 7 continents, you know what, Kevin Powell, you better learn more about Puerto Ricans and Dominicans and Jewish folks and Italian folks and women, the LGBTQ plus community, all the, you have a responsibility to keep growing. And that needs to start to be reflected in the work that you put out there, the energy that you put out there, if that makes sense. Otherwise we're just reinforcing the same stereotypes that we were given, sadly, by our schools, by some of our families, by some of our religious institutions, and past people who have been in the media, in advertising. And I think we have a responsibility to correct the historical wrongs, to use the quote of President Lyndon Johnson during the Civil Rights Movement. And one of the historical wrongs that I had to deal with was believing that I was not worthy, because I was a Black person, because I didn't see myself in a lot of spaces. That's what I think we have to think about. And I'm saying that with all due love and respect, because I know everyone on this call is brilliant and is powerful, but it really means that you have to make a conscious decision. I mean, think about it, you all. I'm an African-American male. I'm a heterosexual, cisgender African-American male, right? Think about that for a second. But in this conversation, I've mentioned several different types of people because I care about everyone. Does that make sense, you all? I could just sit here and I could have just talked the whole time about what it is to be a Black man in America. That's easily done. I got a lot to say about that. But, because of my experiences, I've said, you know what? I want to make sure people understand we're all connected. And it doesn't just affect someone like me if I don't see myself in media and ads in a certain kind of way. It affects people who still don't believe that I can do anything other than be an entertainer, a rapper, or an athlete, and that's it.
Absolutely. And it's, Kevin, that's one of the key things that we say here at Carmichael Lynch, that we say that the only way to do this work is to build the cultural competency of the organization. And that's the only way to do this. It's not about, I think, in the evolution of media and advertising, it was basic work review, which was grab something, send it to the person in the corner that was most likely a person of color, and say, is this offensive or is it not offensive? Do you realize the entire context and the missed opportunity we had to collectively educate all of us around? Yeah. So that's what we're not doing here. What we're doing here, and I always tell this when I meet with our senior leadership team and employees, is that it is critical that we all take the time to do what you have done, Kevin, to understand that the advancement of this work is based on that. It's based on the openness of our mind and our heart. That's where it all begins. It's not that work that you sent to the corner to make sure that you're not offensive, because being offensive is an extreme. At that point, right, if you have to check your extreme, that means that you're already on the wrong path, right? Versus educating yourself from a foundation perspective so that you understand how to properly represent different perspectives and opinions. Then you don't have to worry about being extreme, because then you have educated yourself. So the way in which you have shared that is in strong alignment with the approach that we're taking here, which is the reason why we are one of the few agencies that I know that invites clients to these meetings. Because if we are not all together in this journey, then at some point the progress that we pursue will be stopped, right?
Yeah.
Because you're trying to get somewhere and there's someone that either doesn't get it, doesn't want to get it, hasn't been exposed. But if we grow together, it may not be at the pace maybe of some that are just reviewing work, but if we do it together, then when we look at the output of the work that we do, not only the campaigns and the messages, but when we look at the work that we do with the community, it's going to be reflective of those voices and reflective of those needs, because we've taken that holistic approach. So we stand in alignment with you in building the cultural competency against every group and understanding of every group of their needs, once again, in their values and speaking to their specific values. So with that, I wanted to ask you, storytelling. Storytelling is an integral part of what you do, and also of what we do. And you shared with us that example of what you saw in the Super Bowl. I wonder if there's anything that you see that you say, we're missing this, and that's just in the advertising industry altogether. This is something that we're not speaking on, or we're not doing when it comes to storytelling, because here we have a group of, we are a creative agency that is constantly looking for ways to make sure that we're being authentic. Are there any ideas, any 2 or 3 things that you would like to share with us on how we can improve in being authentic?
Well, I think that any company needs to make sure they have as many people under 40 and 30 as possible at the company. That's number one. And no diss to any of us are over 40. I'm over 40. So shout out to Gen Xers out there. I love being a Generation Xer. I don't get me mistaken. But I think that, I think it should be something where we ask folks and pay attention to what the trends are with young people. Young people drive our culture, drive our society. That's always been the case. When you mentioned Vibe magazine, when I was at Vibe magazine that Quincy Jones started back in the 90s, Quincy Jones was in his 50s. All of us were basically 30 and under. And it was a diverse group of people. And he trusted the fact that we knew what we were doing. We were competent skill-wise, but also that we knew how to bring together different types of people with the magazine we were creating. And so when I think about what you all can be doing, I just think, it's a unique opportunity to use advertising, use media to have some of the difficult conversations out there. I believe, especially it's needed. No one it's, you see Nike doing things, what they did with Colin Kaepernick. I thought that was bold, but we need to see more of that, where people are really using, the opportunity not only to sell a product, which we know that's the bottom line. We want to sell product. We have to do that as part of what this world is that we are part of. But at the same time, can we create creative short films, i.e. commercials, that will also force people to think about things in a different kind of way? Some of y'all are old enough to remember what I remember. It's like, think about the old Coca-Cola commercial from the 70s. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Where you saw young people on a mountain in Italy, but it was young people from all around the world singing that song. I don't know about you all, but that song, and I see you, Brent Hausman, I see your question. I'm going to come to you in a second. That song had a huge impact on me. I didn't even realize how much it did. Just the song and, the fact that it was diverse people together. You know what I'm saying? That was important. Yes, I'd like to teach the world to sing. That's what I'm talking. I think that's one of the greatest commercials I've ever seen. I think I was just reading about the 50th anniversary of Zoom. Zoom, you're talking about examples, how it was intentional. The person who created Zoom for for PBS, pardon me, intentionally had kids of all different backgrounds. And as kids, we're not even thinking about it, because the reality is, as kids, until we're taught this person's this race, this person's this gender, this person's this gender identity, this person's disabled, this person's this person's that, we just play together. But at some point, it starts to fall into this bag of we're separating people from each other based on their identities. Bren, I love Bren. Thank you, Bren. And so I think that we have to, and someone else said it, I don't know if it's Bren or someone, it was Bridget, we have to be intentional. And so I think part of it is like, are we working with people who are out there, who have been doing content creation, who actually have been doing the work in some form where, hey, we're not just creating commercials just because it's for Women's History Month, or if it's a women's product, or it's going to appeal to Pride, it's going to appeal to Black History Month, it's going to appeal to Jewish folks, it's going to appeal to the Latinx community. But we also understand that even when it's not, Latinx Heritage Month, or it's something around a Jewish holiday or Kwanzaa for Black folks, that this is actually the right thing to do, because this actually might help to stop people from being anti-Semitic or racist or sexist or whatever it may be, because we know the power of it. And I'll say this to you, Carol, and I'll say this to everyone here. As much as I love writing, I realize that people will watch stuff and listen to stuff far quicker than they'll ever read a book. And so there's a tremendous power that the advertising world globally has in helping to stem the tide of a lot of this ugliness that we see out there. Or we can unwittingly perpetuate stereotypes, like not having a Black father in that commercial, for that Black boy, as if no one has a Black father at all in any community, which we know is a lie.
Absolutely. And I think it takes us back to that. I love that you mentioned this. And I think this is something we all need to hear, is that playing it safe. When I hear that, I cringe, because there are certain stories that are not told because we're playing it safe. But the question is, what do you really get out of that? Because we have plenty of data and insights that says that audiences want you to speak to their specific needs, their specific values, and to have the real conversation. Every ad and everything that we have seen out there that has resonated, it's someone that had an authentic conversation. Everyone that played it safe got lost in the mix. So really what we're doing, when we make those utter decisions of playing it safe, it shows that we are using a dated approach, right? That we're using the approach that didn't work, not only for our business, but also for the movement of the society and what we hope to inherit to our children. So I think that part of the invitation that we're doing, and that the work that we try to do at Carmichael Lynch, is to get rid of that old script. That script didn't take us to where we're trying to go. So the new script is one where we are all educating ourselves. We're all self-educating. We're all growing. We're all practicing love. We're all practicing empathy, and we are bringing it to work in a form of action, not in a rhetoric sense, right? Where we're saying, I need to see this. I need to have someone that is of a diverse background to bring that diverse perspective. So as we continue to do that, which is the work that we're trying to do here at CL, I think that's, I'm in strong agreement with you, that is how we do what we say we're going to do, which is we say we want to change the world. That's how you change the world. But playing it safe has had very little to do with changing the world. So I really I think that that's the open invitation that I partner with you in us having that approach